My name is Elise Naramore. The primary purpose of this video series has been to explain how the learning progression method is implemented, really focusing on and drilling down into the logistics of grading. This is part 10, in which you will learn the various tools and strategies that I use to support students to reach their goals. The first step to success is doing and submitting work consistently. If I can get you to engage, then it is likely you will see success. If you see success, you will continue to engage. It's addicting. There are a bunch of different ways that I support students. The most obvious, and one that I've done forever, is to offer extra help. I make myself available as much as possible before and after school, during lunch, often during a class period when I'm not teaching. But the strategies that I've put in place since beginning to use the learning progression method that I'd like to talk about now are goal setting, score tracking, and conferencing. If we ask a student, or a parent for that matter, what they want to achieve, they almost uniformly say, I want an A. But they have no idea how to achieve that except to perform perfectly on every single assessment that they take. And we wonder why kids are anxious. So instead of focusing on the grade, I'm going to have you examine where you are currently, what the expectations are, and then what specific items you need to work on during the next unit. I've created a form for students to use, and I give this out at the beginning of each unit. At the beginning of Unit 3, when I finish scoring all of the Unit 2 work, I hand out this 2-page guide. This is the first side, in which I list the practice, the target level, and the assessment used. You are given time to look up and record your scores on these assessments. You then compare these scores to the target levels to determine whether you are below, at, or above the target levels for each practice. Anything you've marked below needs to be worked on in the next unit. The target levels for the new unit are to the far right. Examine those. If there are any others that you need to work on, you could mark those to work on as well. This side helps students figure out how to use the grade translation chart, which we did. This page helps students figure out how to use the grade translation chart and steps you through the thinking process. This is similar to what I presented in Module 8. You can see the chart at the top. Then there are a sequence of questions that you need to answer. The point of this is to make concrete those skills that you need to work on, because if you earn a lower grade than you want, you usually assume that you're doing poorly in everything, and that's not how this works. For example, let's say that you earn 6 developing, 1 not enough evidence, and the rest at beginning. This would mean that you earned a D- for the semester. And this would probably freak you out, but wait, let's think this through. Let's say that you want to earn a minimum of a B. Then using the chart, you would see that any 8 standards at the developing level with no standard lower than beginning. Comparing that to what you currently have means that you need to move 2 practices up to developing, especially making sure to get rid of the not enough evidence. You can choose which ones to do. This is very concrete and specific and very manageable. We do this at the end of every single unit except for the first one. We're just not ready at that point. Students are invited to conference with me one-on-one to get advice, accountability, and understanding. But you can also use it to talk to your parents and guidance counselors as a visual aid to explain how you are doing. Parents and guidance counselors, please ask the student to show you their most current goal-setting sheet. I can't stress enough how important it is to set concrete and measurable goals. It is the #1 thing to do to reduce stress and anxiety, to manage big tasks by cutting it up into smaller chunks. The main focus of my grading strategy is incremental improvement over time. While we don't care about grades per se, we do want to be very aware of progress. There should be transparency and accountability. Students should always be fully involved in their achievements and actively participating in reaching their goals. Grades are earned, not given. Students, like all of us, make choices to work or not, to practice or not, to address weak areas or not, to manage their time or not. It's an opportunity to learn a life lesson, not just get through a class on the way to college. In addition to and in conjunction with the goal setting, students also track their progress over the long term. Because the grading program in Genesis only shows scores from the current unit, it's not possible to see previous scores on that application. Therefore, it can be difficult for students and parents and guidance counselors to see patterns. This form is provided to students at the beginning of the year. I usually do it on a special color like orange, so it's easy to find. And students, you're responsible for completing it. There are 5 sections: labs, checkpoints, content mastery checkpoints, projects, and conferencing. As discussed in part 4 of this video series, scores on the first 4 categories are used to determine grades at the end of the year. Recall that labs are used to assess the 4 practices: experimental design, data analysis, arguing a claim, and using feedback. So this allows students to record their scores on each lab report that they do. In addition, there's a minimum number of lab reports that you must complete in order to do what we consider enough practice. This is tailored to the course, with physics students required to complete 16 and honors physics 18 out of about 20 or 21 formal lab reports. This allows you to miss a few without any ramifications. Checkpoints include quizzes and unit tests. Students receive feedback on the practices creating explanations, problem solving, and creating graphs and interpreting graphs. All unit tests are mandatory. As described in part 4 of this video series, content mastery checkpoints are specifically designed to help students learn the vocabulary and specialized terminology for my class. Each contains 6 to 8 questions pulled from a 50-item question bank that's taken weekly. While our classes stress the importance of skills versus content, one cannot apply knowledge unless one knows the content. That's what this is all about, and scores are used in the engaging with content practice. All content mastery checkpoints are mandatory, although you can opt out of attempt 5 if you earn 100% on attempt 4. Lastly, students record their scores on their project, engaging with content and the engineering design process. All projects are mandatory. And note, we will discuss this last section shortly. I recommend doing this weekly. Initially, I'm going to provide time to complete it during class, but transition to giving reminders only. Parents and guidance counselors, please ask the student to show you their score tracking log. It's a great way to see how they're doing. Students are invited to conference with me one-on-one to get advice, accountability, and understanding. But you can also use it to talk to your parents and guidance counselors as a visual aid to explain how you are doing. The keystone to student success is conferencing. I have mandatory signups 3 times a year: fall, winter, and spring. Students bring their most recent goal setting and updated score tracking, as well as some of their most recent assessments, so we can look at progress together. Recall that on the score tracking sheet, there was a section for conferencing, as it is a mandatory requirement for passing this class. This is the most valuable tool that I've added to my class since the outset of this grading strategy. When do we implement this? Well, we do it during class, giving independent practice to other students, during school but outside of class, so study halls, for example, if it overlaps with my prep, before, after school, or during lunch. It's a very busy time for me, scheduling about 100 students, each for 10 to 15-minute conversations. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get it all done, and during that time, I give up my lunch and loads of prep time. But it has arguably made the biggest impact in my relationship with individual students as well as in their growth as learners. Of course, there are students who don't open up, who yes me to death, or who just don't show up at all. But they are not only in the minority, but they are identified early and often have come around due to my dogged determination to chase them down. Warning to students, no one gets to escape me. I will find you. Collaborative relationships with parents are a valuable tool in student success. Whenever possible, I call home to talk about the child's progress and possible path to success. It's so easy to be positive with the learning progression method, clearly communicating what the student is doing well and steps he or she can take to improve. I invite all parents to reach out to discuss any concerns or questions they may have. Overtly teaching students how to be the captain of their own ship is one of my goals. It needs to be structured. It's not intuitive. All of the essential elements of the learning progression method work in conjunction to support student learning. That's indeed why they are integrated into this strategy. In the last module, we will address some common misconceptions and frequently asked questions.